about the law and talking about the wicked. And one of the verses in last Sabbath school class was talking about the wicked being praised. So what came to my mind, or what struck out to me in this particular chapter, what came was beware of Satan's glory. And just some facts, real quick facts about First Chronicles. So First Chronicles mirrors parts of Second Samuel and First Kings. First Chronicles is solely focused on David's reign as king of Israel and the recording of significant events that took place while he ruled. And in this particular chapter, our brother David has once again found himself in trouble with Yahweh because of his own deeds. So as you know by now, we are going to be once again talking about our brother David. And I don't know why, but how for some reason Yahweh has got me going back and forth between Solomon and David. And I mean, I bless him for it, because both very, very powerful men of Yahweh. But this time it got us back going. Got me studying up and looking up on what David is doing this time. And added as my whole studying of this chapter, one question came up in my mind. I was like, okay. So we all know that David was revered as the apple of Yahweh's eye. He was Yahweh loved David with all his heart. But it seemed like every script, every time I read a story about David doing something like to make Yahweh angry. And I was like, how is somebody who's always making Yahweh angry looked at as the apple of his eye? And in my studying, it said that it wasn't about what David did, his deeds. It was always of what he did after the deeds that made him, Yahweh, love him so much. And that made so much sense to me, because it was every time David got himself into something or he did something, every single time he repented. I mean, to the point of building, he wanted to build Yahweh a temple just out of repentance because of that. But Yahweh ended up telling that, Yahweh told him, you're not going to build the temple. I'm going to have your son build it. So it just goes to show that how merciful Yahweh really is. And in even one of the side notes in our word, it said that Yahweh really, really does not want to punish his people, Israel. He never wants to punish us. However, he would refer that when we do step out of his will, we repent, and then he welcome us back in. However, which we're going to see in this chapter, our pride just does not let us do that sometimes. So First Chronicles, the 21st chapter, which is on page 344. And real quick, before I go into that, just some quick facts about David, mainly what we all know. So David is one of the sons of Jesse. He was a shepherd of sheep. He was musically inclined. We all know that he, even in the word, it says that he was very fair to look at, a handsome man. And he was also chosen by Yahweh to be the king over Israel. So I'm just going to the first verse. It says, Satan stood up against Israel and incited David to number Israel. Now, just that very, very first verse, honestly, it motivated this whole lesson today, because just that first sentence, Satan stood up against Israel. And when you think of standing up, that's confident. That's a confidence thing. You got to know that you're going to defeat somebody when you stand up against them. So it says that Satan stood up against Israel. And so I'm going to read, this is straight out of the metaphysical Bible of what Satan stands for. So the metaphysical Bible says, Satan, liar in wait, an adversary, an enemy, a hater, an accuser, an opposer, and a contradictor. The same as the devil, the adversary, the evil one. It says metaphysically, Satan represents the deceiving phase of mind in man that has fixed ideas in opposition to truth. Satan assumes various forms in man's consciousness, among which may be mentioned egotism, a puffing up of the personality. Summed up, it is the state of mind in man that believes in its own sufficiency, independent of its creative source. So we all know that when you think of, especially before we even got to these teachings, that's why it's so beautiful to be a part of this temple, to really, really learn what these things stand for. We all know, we thought Satan, when you think of Satan, you think of somebody with a pitchfork, basically like a creature or something like that. But then when you read that, that is literally a state of mind that's it's basically the opposite of what Yahweh is. The going against who Yahweh is and it all summed up our pride. When you think that you are doing these things on your own, or I can do this on my own, that's nothing but. And even in the metaphysical Bible, it talked about satanic thoughts. Now, me personally, when I would think of satanic thoughts, you think of like demon possession and things like that. But it's just something as simple as living and walking in your pride is a satanic thought. And when you think of it something simple like that, I couldn't do nothing but apologize to Yahweh. How many satanic thoughts? How many times have I stood in my pride and I did that against Yahweh? Just something as simple as that. But that it also said that Satan is a deceiver as well. So if you go around thinking in your mind that Satan is just this other creature, far away thing like that, it's gonna be easy to deceive you to think that you're not thinking a satanic thought. It's easy to think that like, oh, I'm not like that. I'm not that bad. But if you walking and doing the opposite of what Yahweh commands, you walking exactly in what Satan is. And it literally says, and this is also those of us who have the book of Yahweh, if you look in the very front of our Bible, it gives a complete breakdown on Satan and why it goes into why we say who she is. So Satan itself, literally the word stands for adversary or enemy. Now the name of Satan was Lilith, Lucifer, Lucille, and in my study, in here in our Bible, it even says that those are actually all women names. And in actuality, she is a fallen angel. She was in heaven, which makes so much sense of why she knows so much. She knows the word in and through. That's why it's so easy to deceive you, which is why the title of this was Beware of Satan's Glory. And when you think of glory, you think of nothing but good things. You think of Yahweh's glory. But it's so easy for us to get mixed up and confused Yahweh's glory with the glory that she presents. So it says Satan stood up against Israel and incited David to number Israel. Incite or incited, the definition is to encourage, stir up, urge, or persuade someone to act in a violent or unlawful way. So the adversary stood up against Israel and persuaded David. Now I thought that was amazing because in order to get to Israel, he had the enemy had to go to David, who was the leader, the king of Israel, which makes so much sense because even we know if you want to take somebody down, you get the head first, and the tail is easily gonna follow after. Because without the king, if the king falls, there's nobody to even follow after. And also in the metaphysical Bible, it said that Satan literally knows that she cannot attack Yahweh. She can't directly go for Yahweh. So what she does is she goes for us, his creation. And I mean, that's something to think about. So I can't get to you, so I'm going to get to what you love the most. And so many times we fall prey to her. So many times Satan incites us. And I was just thinking about that word incite, and I was like, in this case, in this literal case, David was incited to number Israel. But what things have I been incited to do? What things did those satanic thoughts come and persuade me to do something else? It says, and incited David to number Israel. Now, numbering Israel means that basically he took a census. And we know nobody knows what a census is, but you go and even America has census. I don't know if it's every year or how often they do a census. It's every year. So basically, and they send you something in the mail. How many people live in your house? Basically, it's taking the number, how many people they got. So David did this, and remember, David was a sheep herder. So David knew how to count. His job was to count the sheep. How many sheep do I have? And then if you look in the side note, it says, she tempted David in setting before his eyes her excellency and glory, her power and her victories. So if we was to go to chapter 20, the chapter right above this, they had just come from a war and they had just won. They had went against the Ammonites. He took over the king. It said he even took the crown off of the king's head and put it on his own head. And so think about a king who he's basically David at this point is undefeated as a king. So now he's got to the point to now where those victories are he's starting to get puffed up in itself. And as soon as Satan can see that there's somewhere where she can get in, that's what she'll use that. So she'll use the victories and put in your head that I did it. We winning because of me. We winning because of how strong we are. And Satan know that. Satan knows how vulnerable we are. It says, so Satan stood up against Israel confidently and incited David to number Israel. Verse 2, it says, so David ordered Ahab and the leaders of the people, go number Israel from Dan to Beersheba and bring their count to me so I may know it. So I'm just read what I wrote. I said, Satan cannot harm or attack Yahweh. So in order to attempt to overthrow him, she goes after his creation. She already knows that she cannot defeat Yahweh. However, her main goal is to separate as many of his followers from him, as many of us that follow Yahweh, separate as many as she can as possible. And the crazy thing is, I was thinking about with her separating, and it ain't even necessarily to fight against the Yahweh. It's just to separate you. It's to get you pulled away from your comforter. It's to get you to pull you away from your strength, your joy. That's all her whole purpose is. So I put, how does she do this? By setting before our eyes her excellency and her glory, her power and her victories. And this is the question I'm going to pose to everyone, and what I was thinking as well. So we all know just from this first verse, David was incited to number Israel. He was incited to do something he wasn't supposed to do out of pride and ego. So the question I wrote, why is it so easy for us to fall prey and be incited by her glory? Elder Kiana.
Because we have hidden motives that's laying dormant in our mind. And she preys off of that. She preys off of our hidden desires, the things that because we fight daily. And the reason we fight daily is because our flesh is there. And like you said, she knows it. And it's easy for us to fall prey because what's the word? It's in my mind. We sit and we go into a place within ourselves. And the only time that she comes to attack us is when we come into a place within ourselves. And we can't never get comfortable. And the only time that she comes is when it's an open opportunity. And the thing is, she only comes when we let our guard down. We can never get comfortable. And it's easy to get comfortable because, like you said, we get caught up within ourselves thinking, well, I'm good. I'm good. She hasn't came to attack. The reason why she hasn't came to attack is because you've been in your word. You've been consistent praying. You've been on your guard. But once you get comfortable and sit back and be like, well, I got it, or Yahweh got me. Absolutely, Yahweh has you. But the thing is, you have to continue to pursue and read your word. You have to continue to meditate, to pray, to communicate. Everything that's given to us through Yahweh, we have to continue to protect it. We have to continue to do that. Because if we don't, she already know our hidden desires. She already know the things that we fight daily with. And all she do is she sit back and waits for that open opportunity. And she sit and she touches that little bit of desire that you have in the back of your mind that you've been fighting. And put in your mind, well, it's okay. You can get back up. But the thing is, you can't never, ever sit and say, I can get back up. Because you don't know how far you're going to be down in that situation to where you cannot get back up. So this is a really beautiful lesson. And I'm grateful to just be in the ministry, learning and knowing the truth, because it keeps you. And with the word that's been coming forth, man, it allows you to sit back and take self-inventory and to be up on your game. You have to be up on your game because she is. She's always forever waiting. She's patient. She's patient. And that's one thing that us as a creation, that we are not patient. And this is a beautiful word. And I bless the Father for allowing you to bring it, because I'm telling you what, she is very present right now. And the thing is, we have to elevate our consciousness. And one thing that Bishop teaches us, that we have to have something stronger, because she's going to present stuff to you. And you just have to know who you are, and you have to be on the lookout.
Elder Bishop first. Praise God.
With all with all the sister or Elder Kiana or Elder David said, it is so true. But also, she comes to fool the very elect of the Father. So we have to make sure that, and when it says she comes to fool the very elect, it even takes us back to the garden, when she spoke to Adam and Eve. Yep. Well, when she was speaking to Eve, and, yep. Eve made the statement, we should not even, if we eat or we touch, that we will surely die. So, but she used what Eve told her and then showed her a different outcome. Yep. So she manipulates, yes, the very elect of the Father. And so when you think about that, that means she knows you're good. She knows you're bad, just like Elder David said. She knows all of that. So you can't trick her or fool her, because she knows it. And she knows the word. Yep. She knows if you're faithful. She knows if you're dedicated. Because when you speak of David, it says, David said, "For I am the apple of your eye," when he spoke to the Father. So that means she don't care who you are. And those are the ones she wants the more.
Absolutely.
Because those that she already has, she can manipulate, play with, control them at any given moment. But her goal is to take away the Son from the Father. So that's why, it's so easy, because she knows the word, she knows you, she knows your inner, she knows your outer, she knows what you like, she knows what you dislike, she knows it all. And when you think about it, that's what you got to realize we're up against. Yeah. So we got to be ever the more grounded and rooted in his word.
Absolutely. Elder Jones?
I was just going to say, this is a beautiful class, and with the question about why is it so easy for us to be incited by her, it made me think of the verse, "We were conceived in sin, shaped in iniquity." So this sinful nature is such a default to us. It's easy to fall into corruption. It's easy to fall into negative thinking. It's easy to fall into unrighteous doing. And even though that's not what it should be, we have to realize and be truthful with ourselves that it is easy to do that. It's easy to be mean. It's easy to be angry. It's easy to fall into those, and I guess the question is like, why? Why is it so easy? And it made me think, even when Elder Bishop just commented how the enemy do know these things, but she only knows them because that's her nature. And we're so prone to that nature that then she knows us. She knows how we're going to react because we are so equipped with that nature. But it reminded me of the verse, we must be born again, and we must become a new man, because she can't identify with that man. All she can do is keep identifying with what we used to be. And if we subject ourselves to what we used to be, if we don't remove those things from our soul, if we don't remove them from our thinking, from our character, then she's going to always know us. She's going to know the things. She's going to know the button to push. She's going to know the things to do. She's going to know what situations to bring up, even in our own mind. And because she knows how she would do it, she knows how we would do it. And until we relieve ourselves from that thinking, relieve ourselves from that nature, from that character that is her, we'll always be subjected to her. And so I was thinking when you was reading the story, David, somewhere in David, that feeling had to be there.
Yep.
Or she couldn't incite anything, because you said, I think you defined incite as to encourage or to stir up.
Yep.
And the scripture also says to stir up the gifts, meaning that it's already inside. It just needs to be stirred up. And the enemy knows that too, that the negative nature that we were conceived and born in is still there. And it's up to us whether we allow her to stir it up inside of us or not. We have to work on ourselves to the point where we become that new man, that those incites don't be so frequent. And not that it won't never happen, because we won't never say that. It may happen, but we have to, when it happens, we got to do what David did. We got to repent. And we have to be like, oh, Father, I'll never want to do that again, or I never want to think that again. And then that just takes more and more power away from her. Eventually, you can walk in the newness of life, as the scripture tells us every step of the way. And so, yeah, it's so easy because it's what we're so prone to. And until we don't be prone to it no more, it's going to always be easy.
Anybody else? All beautiful comments. And what I had wrote down in response to that, to why is it so easy to fall prey to be incited by her glory, the first thing I wrote down is because her glory is familiar, and as Elder Kiana was saying, it's comfortable. I also wrote, her glory, it looks good. Those things that we shouldn't have, don't they always look good? And I also wrote, they feel good to the flesh. They're always a pleasuring, no matter what it is, to fulfill it. It's a pleasure. In David's case, the pleasure was his pride. The pleasure of that was basically, I'm the ruler of this. So you get pleasure from that. Power is a pleasure, a feeling of pleasure when you have that power or that feeling that you are the one in control. And that goes into what I also wrote, is it makes you feel like you're the victor, you're the winner. So I put, we have to be cautious of mixing up her glory with Yahweh's glory. And many people get the two confused even today. So especially when it come to, that's why we get blessings mixed up with what blessings are. Anything that has something to do with, now I'm not saying if you are in need of something, Yahweh knows that as well. And you can be blessed with something. But the blessing itself is not in that material thing. Just say, okay, yes, you say you got a job or something and you need a vehicle to get back and forth. Granted, it's still a way provided because you could take public transportation. However, in this case, I need a car to do this. Now, it may work out to where you get to where you can get a car. The faith does not lie in that car, though. Once you start to put your faith in that thing, that's when it starts to be a problem. That's now as her glory is starting to come in, because now it's like with her glory, it can be taken away. Her glory can be snatched from you. His glory cannot. However, with his glory, what can happen is you can give it up. You can give up his glory. And so it can't be snatched from you, but you can give it up. Her glory can be taken from you. That car can get stolen the very next day. Then what? Now you back to, is Yahweh still not who he said he was now that you do not have that car? And if you never ever get the car, is Yahweh still who he said he would be? So it says, so David ordered Ahab and the leaders of the people, go number Israel from Dan and Beersheba and bring their count to me so I may know it. The problem with what David did was because it said that it's actually not unusual for people to take a census out on, like the government does. It's not unusual. That's actually a normal thing to do. However, even in Exodus, Yahweh commanded Moses to never count the people, never take a census out on the people, because one, and which is where David messed up, they're not his people. We need to know that we belong to Yahweh. We are of Yahweh's people, and that's where David fell and he lost it, because all these things, he's winning, he's the king over all these people. I got all these strong people, soldiers. So now he's starting to think, these are my people. So he wanted to go number the people because he felt like in his mind that the strength was in the numbers. He felt like they were only winning because of how many people he had. So in his mind, he wanted to go number how many people we got, just in case we go to a neighbor, we go fight again and we don't have enough. That's where he messed up at. He said David numbered Israel as if they belonged to him, when in actuality Israel was and still is Yahweh's people. David was only put in charge to lead them, but his ego, or as we said before, those satanic thoughts, made David feel like they were his people. Verse 3 says, but Ahab answered, may Yahweh make his people 100 times more than they are. So Ahab was basically, he was the commander over David's army. And in my when I looked it up in who Ahab was, Ahab actually is a descendant. He's the nephew of David. Actually, he's the David's sister. He's the son of David's sister. So, and also we know about Ahab before when we spoke about Bathsheba, what David did with Bathsheba. Ahab is the one that David sent out to go and kill Bathsheba's husband. So it said that Ahab was always seemed to be in the mix of whenever David wanted to do something he wasn't supposed to do. Now, in this instance, we see that Ahab had no problem with coming back up against the king, which many people don't want to do because, if you go against the king, that can be your head. But it says here that Ahab answered, may Yahweh make his people 100 times more than they are. But my ruler, the king, they are all your servants. Why then does my ruler want to do this thing? Why should he bring guilt upon Israel? So Ahab immediately tries to remind David that these people are indeed Yahweh's people. Ahab had no problem speaking to David whenever he thought he was wrong, and he had done it on a few occasions. In this instance, and as well with when he was ordered to go kill Bathsheba's husband, he also said to David, you might want to rethink this. Like, you know what I mean? And that made me think we need to have a friend like Ahab. Because so many of us want to have friends that'll just go along with it. And he's the king. I mean, think how many yes men do you think David really had in his company? Go do this. Okay, you the king. We gonna go do it without even thinking of it. But it said that Ahab also represented basically in between man's mind and the spiritual mind as well. So he was that think of what you wanted to do something, and that came up in your mind, and you was like, that's actually probably, I know I shouldn't be doing that. But it said that the king overrode that thought, which when those things built up in us, those kings that we have set up in our mind, they're going to always override what we know we're supposed to be doing. Elder Bishop.
Thank you. That's such a good point because within us, we have a scale that lets us know when we're going against the will of the Almighty. But we have to realize where the king resides in us. And when I say king, I mean the ruling factor of us. Will it stand in our ego, or will it stand in righteousness?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, that is such a wow point because there's a scale. And the thing with that, even with he killed Bathsheba's husband, was sent out to place him so he could be killed, he still followed the authority that he was under.
Yeah.
So that's what we got to make sure where our authority lies.
Yes.
Because if our authority lies on more so to the flesh, because it tells us with that scenario, we have righteousness within, and it speaks against our unrighteousness. But if that unrighteousness prevails, then we make ill will or ill decisions in the will of the Almighty.
Absolutely. Very good point. And that's exactly what it was saying with Ahab. And and as we go on, you're going to see Ahab, like you said, Ahab knew he knew Yahweh. And he knew that with David doing this, he knew that Yahweh was not going to be happy. And he knew he was part of David's army too. So even part of him is thinking, I'm going to pay too, because I'm doing what you telling me to do. But like you said, when those things outside of his will override, it doesn't even matter. It no longer matters. I wrote, so it says, but my ruler, the king, they are all your servants. Why then does my ruler want to do this thing? Why should he bring guilt upon Israel? Ahab wanted to know the true motive behind why David desired so much to take up a census on Israel, which in hindsight, as I said before, is not an unusual thing for people to do. However, Ahab knew that it was the intentions that David did it. That is what would bring trouble to Israel as a whole. And as those who just came in, we are in First Chronicles, the 21st chapter. That's on page 344. And in my studying, it was saying that First Chronicles and Second Chronicles, those books are actually originally those are one book as a whole, and it was also the same for I want to say it was Kings and Samuel as well. Those were actually one book, but then the philosophers like separated it into separate books. So, and if you go into Second Samuel, the 24th chapter, is literally this chapter is a mirroring. So they're basically the same thing, just kind of how like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all like they mirror each other. This is exactly the same. So, and according to Second Samuel, the 24th chapter, this event took place late in David's reign. So this whole thing where David is Satan stood up in him, this is later in the latter end of David's reign, which meaning he's been winning for a long. He's been king for a long time. He's been in power for a long time, and that made me think we just cannot get comfortable in this. That's why it makes so much sense that being here so many years, it does not mean anything. Because it said in the latter end of his years, that's when Satan stood up in the latter end. You would think I've been in this so long, I should be more powerful against what Satan shouldn't even be able to persuade me, should she? Because I've been in this so long. However, as Elder Bishop was saying, that's who she want. She want the one who said that I'm in this, I'm sold out. As David said, I'm the apple of his eye. That's music to her ears. She said, okay, let's see. And also in my study, in that first verse when it says Satan stood up against Israel, and you can see it as well in 2 Samuel, the mirroring chapter, it said that Yahweh allowed Satan to do it. And I thought about that. I'm like, why does Yahweh allow Satan to do things to us? Remember the same thing with Job. Yahweh allowed Satan to do that to Job as well. And the thing is, we got to know we got to be tested. With me standing up here, that's why sometimes it'd be so scary it's as nervous as I am to stand up in front of people, it's also like, man, I'm gonna be tested. And I don't know what the test gonna be. In my mind, I may think it's gonna be something it's easy. But it may be something that it may be something, as this word is saying, that can incite me. So that's why we need to make sure when we bring this word and teach this word, talking to myself too, we just gotta be ready. We gotta be ready to fight and contend. So it says, according to 2 Samuel 24, this event took place late in David's reign. So late in his reign, David was tempted to take all of Israel's success and the power for himself and make it his glory. David had intentions of using the census as a way for him to take all the credit for himself. It was stated that the spirit of vainglory and numbers had taken possession of the people as well as the king. There became a tendency to trust in numbers and not in Yahweh anymore. How many of us have heard the term, it's strength in numbers? And I've heard that plenty of times, especially if you played a team sport or something like that, it's strength in numbers. But we got to know that when it comes to Yahweh's will, and we should know in this house, number-wise, we're not as much. But man, the power that lies within this place, that should prove to you right there. When it comes to Yahweh's glory and walking in his will, that statement means nothing. So basically what happened is David began to rely more in the numbers of the people. And he felt like the more people I had, the more we gonna win. When he got it mixed up, that Yahweh is the whole reason from the jump that we've even been winning. Elder Bishop.
Is when you lean on numbers, you let go of the Father.
Absolutely.
It's just like people who have a great deal of finances.
Mm-hmm.
The more money they have, the more they put into their finances than into the Father. And we can't do that. Just because we're great in number or we're great in finances, it's still the Father that provides, Yahweh Jireh. He's my provider. We have to know that. Because without that, no matter what we have, get, or obtain, we're lost.
Absolutely. Elder Emily.
Praise Yahweh. And also, not only numbers, we can find strength in our intelligence. We can find strength in our talents, our gifts,
Yep.
all of those things, when we put our trust in our ability, then we're doing the exact same thing that David did. So it's not only numbers, but also, I mean, it can go to so many different
Anywhere.
places. I put my trust in my job. My job is going to give me a paycheck at the end of the week. What if it doesn't?
Absolutely.
So that's a beautiful, beautiful lesson. And then also, it makes me think of Gideon and how Gideon started with a great number of people. However, each time Yahweh said it's too many. And so he made them get rid of some more. He made Gideon get rid of some more. And then he came back again. Okay, it's still too many. Because in him saying it, he told Gideon, then the people will believe that they did it and not me.
Yeah.
So let's dwindle this down even more so that you can see how great Yahweh is.
Absolutely.
So sometimes he'll remove the things that you count on or the things that you lean on. He'll remove those things so you can just see. And it's not anything against you. He just wants you to know how great he is, which is it can feel real hard.
Right.
But he just wants you to know I'm greater than all
All
of it.
of that. Yeah. Elder Candace.
Praise Yahweh. I'm just listening from the beginning and how and the things you were saying. The word that I hear is humility, like just pounding in my head, because when you talk about great in numbers and how our kingdom may not be thousands, however, the greatness of it is because Yahweh is here.
Absolutely.
So him alone, and we're just the company of him. So his presence, who he is, his essence, his divineness, his righteousness is here. Even if we don't respect and act in it,
Right.
he's here in this kingdom. And he stands surely in our King. And so we're just accompanying him. And that's the blessing of it, because he allows us to accompany him. So therefore we are inheritors of all that he dishes out. And another thing, when you say, why would Yahweh allow this?
Right.
We're doing this, we're trying this, we're living this. And he could, no matter what we go through, he keep allowing it. Well, it made me think about that is Paul. And when he was talking to the Corinthians, and he said that Yahweh has revealed himself unto him. But it is he that I will rejoice. It is he that I will boast in. It is him that I will hold up before the people. It is not me. I'm just accompanying him. And he has allowed me to see him in the revealing of him. And then moving out of that, even him saying, I'm going to boast in Yahweh, and I'm going to brag about him. Yahweh said, okay, stay right there. Here's a thorn.
Thorn in my flesh. Yep.
And it makes me think, every time I think about that, that's not no little bitty piece of thorn that we run through the fields when we was children.
Right.
But that was something great that Paul will forever remember. Yahweh is here with me. Not to hurt him, not to pierce him in wherever he put the thorn in. But he said that I am with you. No matter what you go through, remember this revealing. Remember this upbringing. Remember this mindset. Remember who I am. No matter what you're going through, I am forever with you. And then on top of that, he ordered one of Satan's angels to torment him. Why would he do that? And Paul just said, I'm going to brag about you.
Right.
I just committed myself, my whole being to you. But even when he did that, Paul said, okay, maybe what I said wasn't great enough, so I'm going to find my strength and I'm going to brag in my weaknesses.
Yep.
And so this is really beautiful, because we might not see when it's not that many people. That's what makes it, as Elder Emilia said, can be difficult. Because when you see it's 1,000 people, we can win.
Confident, yeah.
We can win.
Yep.
So your confidence is in what you said, the people.
Yep.
But when you don't see your way, when your mind is here and there, when you're walking but you're trying to figure out which way you're supposed to go, that is the humility is one of the ways, one of the arrows that leads us to the narrow path, and continue to keep us on it. Because if we keep that thorn in us, knowing that no matter what we go through, Yahweh is forever there. So I look at it as you speak this morning as Yahweh is here and we are in the
Absolutely.
company of him. And that's a blessing.
Absolutely. Elder Bishop.
Praise Yahweh. It took me, what she said about Paul is, it took it right back to what you said when you say that you preach or you teach, you think in your mind, I'm going to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same scenario with Paul. That's what that thorn was to remind him of. And then just because he said that I'm going to lift you up to evermore. I'm going to praise you even more. And then she said, it was an imp sent to torment him even the more because I'm going to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Father must know that when you say it,
Absolutely.
no matter what you go up against, what comes up against you, you're going to stand.
Mm-hmm.
And even, and it's the same thing with David. He let the enemy, like with Job, he let the enemy do those things because he has to know if we're going to stand.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have an advantage because he's
sure.
given us examples.
For sure.
He's put it before us. So even if she used one of our leaders, it should be all of our favorite words, is humility.
Mm-hmm.
Humility means I'm subject to your will.
Mm-hmm.
Humility means I'm subject to your word. Humility means I'm subject to your leader. Humility means I'm subject to the teacher. Because when they come in the righteousness, in the love, no matter how hard it may be that they come, no matter how gentle they may come, but as long as they come in his righteousness,
Mm-hmm.
his love, then he's given the people opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to receive, to hear, to learn, to act on. He's equipping us.
Yes.
This is a beautiful lesson.
Bless you.
I try not to say that because everybody says that. But this is a beautiful lesson. Hallelujah.
Bless you. Man, bless you. And just like for when Elder Candace was talking about the strength in numbers and looking at Yahweh, it made for some as she was talking, for some reason I just picture my leader talking to us. And how many times that he's made a comment, he was like, I want to cut out the light so I don't even see y'all. And that is, with her talking about that, it made me think, literally, if our leader put his faith in us, in the people, when he looked at us and he see just us as ourselves, our personalities that pop out, he had all rights to, I don't even want to deal with you. I'm cool. You know what I mean? I know I've done things where, and none of us want to be on the bad side or make our bishop upset or feel like we've made him upset. However, we do it. We do things that is just not and the things that we do is always out of the will of Yahweh. And we know it's proven that our leader walks so much so connected with Yahweh. When we're spiritually, we don't even have to tell him. When we're spiritually out of whack, he'll let you know. That's like you said, he can smell it for real. It's been plenty of times when I know I'm not right. And the first thing, what I used to do back then is, I'm not going back in the office. Because that's simple. Just being in the environment. It's been times, plenty of us have sat in there and he be like, what's wrong with you? What you talking about? I ain't even told nobody else. You know what I mean? But as I got older and got into this, when I am in that way, I want to go back in the office. Because I need somebody to call me out. Even if on my own, that's why Yahweh is so beautiful. I may not even go willingly to Bishop and be like, Bishop, I need to talk. But it's gonna be something in him that he gonna be like, what's going on? What's wrong with you? And there's plenty of times that's happening that's prompt me to conversate. And before I know it, it's like a whole turning, the whole situation. The situation itself, I'm still in it. But it's something that's just turning. You could feel something. There it is. It's a deep breath now. So beautiful. So the fourth verse, it says, nevertheless, the kings. So remember, in the third verse, Ahab is talking to David, and he's like, Basically, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to bring guilt upon Israel by doing this? And the fourth verse says, those who just walked in, we are in 1 Chronicles 21st chapter. The fourth verse says, nevertheless, the king's word overruled the admonition of Ahab. So Ahab left and went throughout all Israel, finally returning to Jerusalem. Ahab reported the total number of the people to David. All Israel had 1,100,000 men capable of drawing the sword, including Yada, who had 470,000 men. And in my studying, it said that it took almost exactly 10 months for Ahab and the leaders to go count all throughout Israel. And that made me think, at first I was thinking, I'm like, that's 10 months that David was sitting in his pride. He was sitting in his ego the whole time, because it's not like today. You couldn't just call up and be like, hey, how many people over there? So they literally had to go travel to all of these places. And also, that also made me think we need to be careful of the things we do, because some things you can't take back at the moment. Certain things you say, certain things you do. So think about it, in those times when he sent Ahab out to do that, out of those 10 months, because there was no phones to call, if David had a change in his mind, he couldn't call back Ahab and say, never mind, don't do it. He had already sent him out. So that's what we need. That made me think we need to be careful in things that we say and things that we do, because we may not be able to, even thinking of apologies, you may not get the chance to apologize. And the person may not accept your apology. It says, Ahab reported the total number of people to David. All Israel had 1,100,000 men capable of drawing the sword, including Yada, who had 470,000 men. Verse 6, but he did not include Levi and Benjamin in our Bibles, in the census, because the king's command was repulsive to him. So out of all of Israel that he was commanded to go count, it was still 2 tribes that Ahab had, and the leaders decided, we're going to spare them. And that was the reason why he left the tribe of Levi and Benjamin out of it, because Ahab knew that the wrath was going to be coming. So, and it said that it was the command was repulsive, and the definition of repulsive is intense distaste or disgust. So what David had commanded Ahab to do, Ahab was disgusted. But as it said in the 4th verse, nevertheless, the king's word overruled. So how many times have those things come up where we literally, and Elder Bishop was saying it so perfectly, we literally know it's not what we should be doing or getting ourselves into, but the king has overruled the admonition. The king overruled those things in our mind that we set up as king, overruled what we know we shouldn't be doing, and it happens so easily all the time. And that's where justification comes in too, because now we try and justify what we did. But there is no justification when you do something you know you shouldn't be doing. Verse 7, it says, Yahweh was displeased by this thing, so he punished Israel. So immediately after, when Ahab had reported the number that David so badly wanted back to David, it says Yahweh was displeased by this thing, so he punished Israel. Verse 8 says, then David said to Yahweh, I have sinned greatly because I have done this thing. But now I pray, forgive the transgression of your servant, for I have behaved very foolishly. I wrote, Yahweh saw what David had done, and he had already made up in his mind to punish Israel. When we stand up in our pride, Yahweh has a way of showing us, and it was said in the comments, Yahweh has a way of showing us that the very thing that we put before him or believe we have ownership over cannot even compare to his power and his glory. In this case, David believed that his strength was dependent on how many soldiers Israel had. If that is then the case, then there would be no need for Yahweh. If all of the power lied within the soldiers, what does David need Yahweh for? Just go get more people that's going to fight, if that's all it took. The word tells us to trust in Yahweh with all of our heart and lean not to our own understanding. If we become dependent on material things or even what it may look like in our eyes, then we show that we have no true faith in who Yahweh is. It said that David instantly saw how foolish he had been and wasted no time in asking Yahweh for forgiveness on his behalf. and that's what stuck out to me. Is David was coming instantly, and it said that he was instantly conscious stricken, and we all know that spirit. When we convicted, David was convicted. He was like, and one, he was convicted because he knew it was wrong. He wasn't supposed to do it, and then this whole story, this latter part, I kept thinking just of a parent, literally Yahweh being a parent. And when you do, just as a child, you know when you do wrong, and your parents find out about it, the first thing, man, your whole. I used to get in trouble. I knew I was gonna get in trouble when I got home. I used to be on the bus with butterflies. I used to be like, Yahweh, let this bus crash or something. Like I don't. I used to let so I can get some. She could feel bad for me. You know what I mean? But that's just how it is. Literally, when we get in trouble. And the thing is what I thought about, and it's happened to David plenty of times, when he had that baby with Bathsheba, that Yahweh told him. Remember, Yahweh said, "I'm gonna take that child." And what did David instantly go do? Well, he went to go fast, and he was sleeping on the floor, and all of that, because he was like, like Yahweh, have mercy on me. And that's just kind of like what he's doing here, Elder Bishop.
It's so beautiful, because we got to always remember that the Father, is just like with David. He knew it.
Mm-hmm.
He knew before Ahab, or I'm saying his name right,
Yeah.
Ahab warned him.
Yep.
And see, that's how the Father is. He'll send a witness when we know we're in the wrong. And that witness, or better yet, he'll send a warning. So the words from Ahab was that warning, telling him, don't do it.
Yep.
They told him, don't do it. But he still allowed his flesh to overrule righteousness. And that's where we get detrimentally in trouble. When the Father sends a warning, that warning is our wake-up call.
Yep.
But if we
Absolutely.
continue to sleep on the Spirit, then we won't be delivered until the Father comes with wrath and chastening.
Yep.
That's the worst time to change, is after you've been chastened.
Mm-hmm.
Because the right thought is to do it before,
Yep.
when the warning came. Because, see, warning came before destruction.
Yep.
He didn't heed to it, so destruction came. He'll wake us. We're going to wake up one way or another.
Yep. That's it. And that's so true. With just at a time, I'm going to wrap up right here. But that's so true what you're saying. And as I was saying, it just kept reminding me of that parent-child. And Yahweh is our Father. And one thing that I learned, especially I keep learning the examples with David, when Yahweh say he punishing, I'm punishing. And now we may get weak as water sometime and say, I'm going to do this, and then as parents and back out from it. But, man, just as Elder Bishop was saying, man, we shouldn't want to wait for the wrath to come. But sometimes that's just what it takes. Sometimes a butt whooping is what you need to get right. A punishment is what you need to make you see, okay, if nothing else, I don't want another whooping. So I'm going to get right. Elder Bishop, Elder Kiana.
So our concept within us is like, well, he loves me, he won't.
Yeah.
But it's because of the love
That he will.
he does.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to realize, if we just get away with it because someone loves us, is that really love?
No.
Because, see, love does chasten
Mm-hmm.
when you're in the wrong.
Elder Kiana.
It says, spare the rod, spoil the child. And basically, if it's not correction and if it's not discipline, the lesson will not be learned.
Mm-hmm.
And the lesson just won't be learned. And the thing is, with the chastisement and the discipline, you're going to remember that. You're going to remember that discipline. You're going to remember that chastising because the way that it comes. And yes, the parent don't want to do it, but if you don't do it, then the child will never learn, and they'll continue to go and continue to do the same thing over and over and over again. But sometimes, like Israel, we are stiff-necked and stubborn. So we do have some children that are stubborn, and that you be like, man, you must love getting your behind whooped. You must love it. You must love being chastised. And sometimes we're just so stubborn. We are so stubborn. And yes, because we know our parents love us. But sometimes you have to know you got to get them. And you do. You have to do it. And then you have to do it, especially if you have other siblings, because the other siblings is watching.
Yeah.
So Yahweh did it for a reason, not only for David, but Israel, to let Israel know.
Yep.
This is the reason why I'm punishing you. And they have to learn by that. So this is a great lesson, and Yahweh is truly worthy to be praised. And I'm truly honored and grateful to know that I have a leader that would chastise me, and that, yeah, it hurt, but I learned a lesson from it. And I thank the Father for it.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? Amen. If there be no more, Cash App should be on the screen. Amen. Service will be starting here shortly in a few. And see you. Shalom.